Welcome to the 6 super skills, building executive functioning to dream it and do it. And of course, you probably recognize dream it and do it comes from Disney's famous saying. And it's just another more fun way of saying setting goals and getting goals. And executive functioning sounds like kind of a complicated word. And in fact, even for psychologists, it was a word that mostly only neuropsychologists used about 10 years ago. But it's become a much bigger word and much more well-known word, in part because many people are saying that there's a crisis of cognition, that since the advent of the cell phones and smartphones, that we have entertainment and information in the palm of our hands at any minute. And this is, of course, a major distraction. And without executive functioning, you can imagine that people are spending so much time with these distractions. It could be streaming Friends on Netflix, it could be video games, it could be social media, and all of those things are addictive. And even worse, some of them, a lot of social media research is showing actually are not as helpful as we think they are, that they are creating depression for some people, in part because as you stream through your feeds, what you find is all these things that other people are doing that you're not. And all of us are so easy to provoke. I want that, I want that, I want that. And it can lead to all these unfulfilled desires that can create the state of depression and helplessness and hopelessness that I can't get all of that. So with this crisis of cognition, there are 6 super skills that you can help to protect your brain, not only because we know that the more you multitask, you actually can diminish your working memory. And so you can affect your brain in negative ways, but to protect your life, to get your goals, to dream it and do it. So the alternative to dreaming and doing it is streaming videos all day and playing video games and scrolling through your news feeds and social media. So these are the 6 super skills. We start with finding gifts. And this one is the most important in the sense that everything follows from this. How can we have positive emotions if we don't feel like we have a positive self-concept? The idea of self-efficacy is task-specific confidence. And without that, we have less chance of succeeding. And what kind of goals are we going to set if we don't even believe in ourselves or understand what we're good at? So this is going to be an important first step. It's important to know also that the entire research base of cognitive behavior psychology is based on challenging distorted thoughts. And among those distorted thoughts are maximizing the negatives, all or nothing thinking, ignoring the positives. So finding gifts is a straightforward application of cognitive behavioral therapy. And secondly, setting goals. Now, one of the main components of executive functioning is planning. And setting goals is just a more fun word for how to set goals or how to plan. Because setting goals puts that element of what do I want and then coming up with a plan for how to achieve it. And chunking is just really simple, straightforward, not a neuropsychology word. It just means break it down into small, manageable chunks. And boosting motivation, this is really meant, I want to emphasize that it is a skill because many people say, I'm just not motivated. Well, actually, motivation is a skill. Straightforward, most simple way to understand it is if you focus on the benefits of an action that you want to take and you focus on the costs of not taking that action, you will boost your motivation. And emotional intelligence means that you can regulate your emotions, that you know how to manage your anxiety, you know how to challenge negative thoughts, and you know how to use flexible thinking to see there's a plan A, there's a plan B. If you don't get what you want the first time, you can come up with a new plan. And attention management is really, I think, this is all research-based tools that I'm going to suggest. And this is fundamental when we talk about the crisis of cognition in the sense of how do you stay focused when there are so many interesting distractions that are so easy, again, right in the palm of your hand? So when we talk about the super skills, I want to emphasize neurodiversity. So for those of you who may have some sort of executive dysfunction, ADHD, a diagnosis, counts as an executive dysfunction. It's a subset of executive dysfunction. And so I really want to emphasize that when I talk about ADHD being a gift, that I put it in the context of neurodiversity, which means that the brain differences are very real and it makes you good at some things and bad at other things. I personally favor the nomadic gene theory, which is, that for some of us, our ancestors were born to, find the next horizon, run for it to optimize resources. And we can imagine that a minority of our population would have that gene. I think some studies have said maybe even 20%. And so I like to think in terms of neurodiversity instead of deficit disorder, because as you can imagine, if our self-efficacy has so much impact on whether we get our goals and what kind of goals we're willing to set, we want to think of this as a difference. And when I think of neurodiversity, I always think of the Mos Eisley Cantina in Star Wars. And just imagine, that was my favorite scene from a movie, is all these people from all over the galaxy in one place and how different everyone is. And that is such a cause for celebration. So I hope that you can see, how straightforward neurodiversity is and how desirable that it is. And neuroplasticity, another big word, means that our brain can change based on how we use it. And this is fundamental to understanding the importance of these skills. The more you use a skill, the more you'll create a neural pathway, and that will make it easier and easier. So what this lets us know is that, one, we can change our brain, but two, that as you begin to apply these super skills, they're going to be harder at the beginning because you're making neural pathways, but they will get easier over time as those neural pathways are created. It becomes like an easily traveled highway. So neurons that fire together, wire together, and not using synapses weakens them. So the more time you build up some of these attention management skills, for example, the stronger those neural pathways will become. So here, I just want to define executive functioning. One way that I always think about it is, I remember one time when I was a teenager and a friend and I had a parent drive us to a concert. And as we were driving there, the parent started asking some very pesky questions. Who are you going to meet when you get there? And how are you going to get home? And it turned out that literally she turned the car around and we did not go to the concert. And she said, I'm going to make an executive decision. So this is a really good example of an executive functioning, that, imagine that, two people in the back seat of the car who want to go to a concert but have no plans, are not organized, have no idea how they're going to get back. And then the parent in the front seat is asking those questions, like, what is your plan here? And it turns out we didn't have one. So I always hated that phrase, I'm going to make an executive decision. But that's exactly what executive functioning is calling us to do. It's an umbrella term which includes many interrelated functions that allow you to control your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. So the first one's going to be attention span. And this is quite simply, how much in control of you are you in being able to pay attention to required tasks? And another one is planning and organization. If you want to get a goal, then you have to create a plan to get there. And if you want to get there, you have to organize your material, your space, your technology. So all of that's going to be essential to getting your goals, dreaming it and doing it. Now, emotional regulation is if your anxiety or your negative thoughts are consistently interfering with your ability to get your goal, it's going to diminish your ability to get what you want. Or if you get angry at people and you burn important contacts, again, these are all going to interfere. So we want to build all of these up. Now, flexible thinking, can be as simple as, creating a plan A and a plan B, meaning, it's not always going to work out the first time or the second time or the third time, but can you keep creating plans, backup plans, to get where you're going, where you want to go. And impulse control means delaying gratification. So if, Netflix is waiting or your social media is waiting, how much time are you going to spend just kind of giving into those impulses? And one simple tip is just to say, this will always be waiting for me. I'll come back to it later. And so in terms of finding gifts, this can include your interests, your talents, your personality leanings, your values. And so as you began to, explore these things and, investigate, whether that be through testing or asking the people around you for help, writing down all the compliments that you get and reviewing them and see if you notice a pattern, that is going to help you to get clear about what you're good at and to find goals that are in alignment with your gifts. In my books, The Gifts of ADHD, I talk very specifically about 5 specific gifts: creativity, empathy, emotional sensitivity, exuberance, and nature smart. And there's been a lot of research that creativity is very strongly associated with ADHD in many different experimental studies. And so these are just, if you can imagine a person who's very empathic, that's going to be a distraction from paying attention, for example, in the classroom. You'll be noticing other people. Emotional sensitivity is a huge distraction. I mean, we need our poets, we need our emotionally sensitive people, but at the end of the day, all of those intense emotions are going to be very compelling and pull us away from work that we may have at hand and distract us from attention. Now, exuberance is kind of a translation of hyperactivity. And so this idea of exuberance is a person who wants to take massive action, but we can see that that could actually play out very well in attaining your goals. It just needs to be channeled and with some planning and organization. Nature smart, there is so much research out there right now that says that nature increases attention. So it should not come as a surprise that many people with ADHD have an affinity for nature. So here's some simple things you can do to get started. Ask yourself these questions. What successes did you have this week? What are the 3 biggest successes in your life? List 3 adjectives that summarize your pattern of success. Write out 5 interests that you have and ask questions like, tell me about a time when you were helpful this week. And you can substitute the word helpful for a big list of adjectives of desirable qualities and find examples of things that you are doing well. Ask what went right. Goal setting is, again, it's an interesting way of applying planning. It directs your activity, it increases motivation, it gives you a purpose, and it helps you focus more. Think of all the resistance you feel when you think about some of your goals. Goals essentially redirect your attention to the positive desired outcome rather than that resistance that you're feeling in the moment. A lot of times that resistance is simply, I just don't feel like it. Goal set priorities, because now you know what to say no to. You can avoid the distraction. If you wanted to write a blog post, for example, but you were really tempted by social media or Netflix, then you might remember, oh yeah, I have that goal, and it reminds you what's more important. They also help manage impulsive behavior. So one self-talk strategy you can use is think of your goal before picking up your cell phone. You can double your chances of success by writing it down. One study found that 70% of those who wrote down their goals reported progress in goal achievement compared to 35%. And if you send weekly progress reports to people that you make a public commitment to, that can also increase your chances of dreaming it and doing it. And so chunking, this one is really simple. We can go through this really quickly. It's just taking a goal and breaking it down into smaller pieces to make it feel more manageable. Some examples of things you can say to yourself would be, I can just write for 10 minutes and at least I will see some progress. I might enjoy Netflix more without the guilty feeling of the blog hanging over my head. How good will I feel when I have put in a small amount of time? What's the smallest amount of time I'm willing to put in now? Do I really want to let my resistance win again? So this gives you some examples of things that you can say to yourself. And it is important to notice, what do you say when you talk to yourself? The more positive that is, the more capable you are of maintaining that emotional positivity and getting your goals. It's kind of like you're a coach and a cheerleader to yourself. So why is procrastination so tempting? So this is, how do we boost motivation? And one of the reasons it's so tempting, and this is so obvious, it feels immediately rewarding. So imagine something that makes you stressed out, and maybe you have a little perfectionistic tendency and you're afraid you're not going to get it just right. Or maybe the stakes are high. And so as soon as you say, you know what, I'm going to do it tomorrow, you feel great, don't you? You're like, okay, that's off my back. Like today's going to be an easy day. But as Abraham Lincoln said, you cannot escape the responsibility of tomorrow by evading it today. So here's the simple principles of increasing motivation. Look for the cost of procrastination. It's not going to go away. It's going to hang over your head. It's going to distract your attention. It's going to make your mood more negative. So those are some of the costs. Focus on the benefits of completion. 1, it'll be done. 2, you'll be closer to your goal. And you're going to feel great. You're going to have that increased sense of what we call self-efficacy. If I want to make something happen, I can do it. Now, one of the traps that we can get caught into is kind of psychoanalyzing ourselves. Why do I procrastinate? What happened in my childhood that made me do this? Maybe it was because of that time when I had I tried to do something and I had a lot of energy and it failed, or maybe it was due to these complicated family dynamics. But the reality is, doing hard things is hard. And in order to get our goals, we will have to do hard things. So it's really not about figuring out why you have resistance. It's just about dealing with it. So here's some self-talk that you can say to feel the resistance and do it anyway. I can do hard things. I will review my goal list as a reminder of how important this is to me and that time is limited. Progress, not perfection, because sometimes we don't get started because we feel like we just got to get it perfect. And tell yourself, every time I say, I don't feel like it, I postpone my goal. So emotional regulation, again, is going to be very important because it interferes with our attention. It's a distraction in itself. So we're just going to do a couple of really quick tools right here. Emotions interfere with our attention and our planning. So you can practice substitute. Substitute an upsetting feeling by remembering a time when you felt valued and appreciated. So take out your cell phone and write down some of the memories where you felt the most valued and appreciated, and come back to that when your emotions are interfering. You can turn the channel. And so when you do this, you forcefully drag your mind away from a negative emotion. So for example, you can create a happy photo file, and you can come to that as a way to literally change the channel. You can have a specific book that you pick up. So again, you're not gonna, and there's a lot of times and places for gaining that insight into the deeper roots of our emotion, going to therapy, figuring out how the past is present. There's a time and a place for that. But this skill here is how to regulate your emotions when it's interfering with something you need to do in the moment. And it's preventing you from getting your goals. And you can challenge those distorted thoughts. Again, all or nothing thinking, magnifying the negative, disqualifying the positives. Notice when you're doing that, label it, and look for those positive emotions. So here we are with a super skill of science of attention management. And these are things that we know boost attention. And this is all science-based. So this one's really simple. Interest, the more interested you are in something, the easier it's going to be to pay attention to. In fact, it's a synonym for attention. Interest means attentiveness is one of its synonyms. So they are almost the same thing. Sleep, there's so much research that not getting enough sleep is going to really mess with our executive functioning. Stress management, it's pretty obvious that too much stress, sometimes we need a little bit of stress to get that motivation, but when it gets to be too much, there's dozens and dozens of stress management tools. One of the most popular now is mindfulness, for example, or deep breathing tools. Exercise. One person has said that exercise is like taking a little bit of Prozac and a little bit of Adderall. It has such powerful effects on our brain. And again, the results of research on time in nature is that it improves our attention by creating restoration. Because it invites this unfocus, it can restore our attention. And just as if you were lifting weights, you would want to take reps, so too does time in nature help us to increase our attention. Other ways to restore our attention include naps, breaks, focus doses, and that may look like setting specific times to work and specific times for break. Happiness. There's so much research that feelings of happiness increase our focus and attention, and there can be some very simple ways to boost that happiness, as we've talked about, just making a list of happy memories or looking through a happy photo file, spending time with people you enjoy being with. These can all increase attention. And of course, limiting technology. Some people are saying that the technology today is creating a crisis of cognition. Maybe it's going too far. Some people say that the deficits in attention created by all these distractions is almost like, the cigarettes of this generation. I don't know if I buy into that, but I do think that it is important to take it very, very seriously, that we need to have these super skills to manage the threats that exist to our attention these days. So if you are interested in learning more, I have 2 different online programs. And the first one is called Strength-Based Treatment for ADHD. And this is for people who want to help other people. And so this could be for therapists or coaches. And if you have ADHD, it might be interesting also as a very more in-depth self-help, more in-depth program for understanding yourself, or if you're a parent and you want to help a child. So this is just a partial list of what you'll find. It's 10 hours of video. It includes Han Solo has ADHD. And of course, that's really just to have some fun. But it makes the process of going through the diagnostic criteria for ADHD just a little bit more interesting. You'll see some case studies of ADHD using informants. I do not use material from my own clients because of their confidentiality, of course. So I interview people at depth and I create case studies. How do you manage attention deficits? There's about a dozen tools there. How do you manage impulsivity and hyperactivity? Again, more than a dozen tools there. And of course, how do you create real world success? That's really what we're aiming for, right? And you'll get a much more in-depth exploration of these 6 super skills. We'll go through each one at great depth. We'll go in great depth into the 5 gifts of ADHD, and we'll spend a lot of time on the how, self-talk solutions. There's going to be a lot of advanced tips. And again, this is just a partial list in terms of guided meditations, ADHD in the workplace, addictions in ADHD, specific brain hacks, collaterals in ADHD therapy, marriage maintenance. And then finally, Find Your ADHD Gifts, Command Your Future is for people who want self-help. So this isn't for therapists or people trying to help other people. It's for people who want to help themselves. And it's a 6-week self-coaching program. And you'll find some videos in there, and you'll also find every day, you'll find some very targeted tools that you can use. And this is just giving you a sample. So as I say, there's 6 weeks, but in the first 2 weeks, you'll find the power of 5 specific tools that has a research base for increasing attention, motivation and persistence, the power of movement, nature is medicine, and nutrition from Dr. Scott Shannon, who I reference his work in my book, The Gift of ADHD, and I include some of that material here. 5 tips for not losing your mind in difficult times. This will change your life. The 4 P's, permission, power, and 2 other ones. And doubting your self-doubt. And so our self-doubt is what is between us goal setting and goal getting. And so what if we just doubted our self-doubt? If we're so good at doubting, let's just put it back on itself. And then the quickest way to change your state is to change your breathing. Again, there's so much research about the power of breathing. In fact, research shows that shallow breathing creates a wide range of physical health symptoms that people are often not aware of. So this, again, is just a brief sample, but this gives you a chance to, to get a sense of how you can get online support where once you get into the program, it's there for you. You can go at your own pace. It's online. There's some video, there's audio, there's attachments, PDFs. There's lots of content there for you. And what I'm offering is that for people who purchase one of these in the next 7 days, you'll get the other one for free. So if you want one of these, you'll get the other one for free. And I like this model, which I call take it and teach it. So let's say you're not a therapist, but you want to get the self-help program. Well, why would you be interested in the teaching program? Because if there is going to be a crisis of cognition, we all need to be able to help each other. And so that might be a way for you to use some of the tools, and how do you give it to someone else in the other program, which I think of as a training program, but could be used, again, in a more general setting, whether it's parenting or if you're a teacher. In many of our jobs, for example, we have opportunities to help support other people. So I hope that this was helpful, and let me know if you have any questions.